Welcome back to context number 3. Today we are going to talk about Philippians 4:13, easily one of the most popular verses in the whole Bible, one that probably most of you have committed to memory at some point, gets talked about all the time. It is on calendars, it's on little things you can put on your desk and bumper stickers. You can buy it probably on corrugated tin or something wooden from Hobby Lobby. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Again, though, context matters. The way that I've heard this used through the years is for almost anything. I've seen it used a lot in athletics. If there's a Christian company that owns like some sort of athletics where they're going to put on this, hey, you can go do anything. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I can barely do a flip on the trampoline, much less a back handspring. Philippians 4:13 does not make me suddenly some sort of superhero that can contort my body into all sorts of positions. It just doesn't happen. I have heard people and parents encourage their kids with the SATs. Look, you're about to go take the SATs. Remember Philippians 4:13. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Also, nothing to do with the SATs. It's so weird that we do this. We tend to take spiritual truths and reduce them to these simple kind of humanistic ideas. I want to share with you a little bit here. I want to read to you some of the context of what's going on. Philippians is a very short book. It will not take you a long time to read through. Even if you're kind of a slow reader, you could knock out Philippians in less than half an hour. If you're a quick reader, you'll be done in about 10 minutes or less. And so Paul is appealing to the Philippian church. He is reminding them who they are in Christ. And he is reminding them of just kind of how he's praising them for the way that they've been generous to him and cared for him. He says this, Philippians 4, beginning in verse 8, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, worthy, honor of respect, worthy of justice, worthy of lovely and commendable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. And the things you have learned from me, teach these to many witnesses. Verse 10, he says, I have great joy in the Lord because now at last you have again expressed your concern for me. The Philippian church, the Macedonian churches have provided financial aid to Paul in his ministries. And again, they have sent to him a friend, a mutual friend, to bring some items to Paul for his care and for his concern. Some food, some clothing, some financial blessings, right? And he says this, he goes, now I know you were concerned about me before, but before you didn't have an opportunity to do anything about it. I'm not saying this because I'm in need. I have learned to be content in any and every circumstance. I've experienced times of abundance and times of need. I have learned what it is, in any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of contentment, whether I am hungry or well satisfied, whether I have plenty or nothing. I am able to do everything through Christ who strengthens me. Nevertheless, you did well to share with me in my troubles. So here's the context. Paul is traveling. He's preaching all over the world. He's been all over Asia. He's been into Turkey. He's been into Greece. And this church in Macedonia is helping to supply his needs. But it's also a very poor church. We know that from 2 Corinthians 8. And so Paul says, there was a time you wanted to meet my needs, but you couldn't. You didn't have the opportunity to do so. He goes, you've taken care of my needs before. Thank you so much for doing that. And he goes, I'm not mentioning this to you so that you'll feel an obligation to take care of my need right now. He says, I know what it is to be hungry. I know what it is to be well fed. I know what it is to be clothed and naked. I know what it is to be abundantly rich and poor. And he says, I can do everything through Christ who strengthens me. I can endure any of these circumstances. I've learned contentment in my life in whatever situation I find myself in because God's grace is sufficient for that. That's what he means in Philippians 4:13. I can endure any circumstance, the poverty or the riches, the nakedness or the clothing, the lack of food or the abundance of food. I can endure any of those things for the sake of Christ because of what Christ has done for me. But then he ends that little section, verse 14, with, but thank you for once again taking care of me. This is a believer who is saying thank you to a church who has provided for him. And he is reminding them like, look, I'm not making a big deal of your gift to me because I want you to do more for me. He goes, I'm content in the circumstances that I am in. He goes, I'm trusting God in my circumstances, but thank you for taking care of me. And so from a very practical sense, I've been traveling. I traveled and did ministry for 20 years. I've been doing full-time preaching ministry in one form or another for 28 years. And there have been times that quite honestly, like when I was single, there'd be times that I'd kind of get down to the very last pieces of bread in the bag of bread, and I'd get down to the end of my peanut butter, and I was content. Yes, I was not ideally where I would like to be. It's not where I would want my family to be, but I was content, and our confidence was in God. And I was able to, as I got married and had kids, there would be times that Michelle and I'd kind of be at the end of our budget, or we'd get medical bills piling up, and surprising medical issues would come up. And suddenly we'd be in this situation where we didn't have the money to do what we felt we needed to do at that time, or to get whatever, groceries. And so this is what Paul's talking about here in Philippians 4:13. I am content in every circumstance because I can endure any circumstance because of Christ. So our view is Christ. We can look at the circumstances of our life and be grateful to God, knowing that He is our King, He is our provider. But at the same time, what's super cool about this is what bookends this conversation that Paul has about contentment is, thank you, Macedonian church, for supplying my need. You've tried to do it before, but you couldn't do it before, but now you've supplied my need. And then he ends it with, thank you for meeting my need. And I think it's a beautiful picture that of also what the church is supposed to be about. So as Christians, are we to be content in whatever circumstance we find ourselves in? Are we supposed to rest in contentment, rest in Christ? Can we do all things? Can we endure every circumstance that life throws at us because our confidence is in Christ? Absolutely. But also, like, the church should be a blessing to the people of the church. Like, we should care for one another. We should provide for one another. So Paul's contentment, his confidence rests in Christ. Not the beginning of this where the Macedonian church provided for them, not the end of this where he's thanking them for providing for him. His confidence wasn't in the Macedonian church. He was able to endure the circumstances of his life because of his confidence in Christ. And yet, the church has been supplied to each other to take care of one another and to meet one another's needs. And that's really the context of what's happening here in Philippians 4. And it's not the SATs, and it's not a backhand spring, and it's not a new job. Look, my confidence rests in Jesus. And but there's also this nuance to it too. Yeah, my confidence rests in Jesus, but man, I am really grateful for the church and really grateful for the way the church meets my needs. And so this has to shape how we talk about it. We can't just rip this verse out of context and make it be whatever we want it to be. We really need to talk about it in light of how Paul is using it here. And when we do, I think we find some really beautiful, deep kind of truths and nuances to it. So talk about that, discuss it amongst yourselves, and meet me back here next week for part 4.